For the wet-on-wet technique, you need to thoroughly soak your paper with clean water. Tape all sides of the paper to prevent buckling. Use a wide, flat brush. Apply water in either vertically or horizontally, then repeat going in the other direction. Overlap your brush strokes as if you were applying a colored wash. This is how a brushstroke looks on wet paper. As it dries, it oodles in unexpected directions and shapes. This is a similar brushstroke on dry paper. It stays where you put it. If you want to use the wet-on-wet technique and have more control over the paint, you can use a damp brush and slightly wet pigment. To make sure the brush is dry enough, use a paper towel to dry the part of the brush closest to the handle. The paint will now stay where you put it. Another way to drop in paint is to use a higher water-to-pigment ratio. Due to the dry brush technique, use a brush that's only slightly wet and pick up some damp pigment. Splay the almost dry brush out with your fingers. Use the brush on its side and drag it across the surface. You can use the edge of the brush to make a thin line. I rarely use a dry brush for leaves, but it's better than a fan brush because you can get much more variety in the strokes. Remember to splay the bristles of your brush to do dry brush. To show you how to do a glaze, I laid down an underpainting and let it dry completely. Make sure to use a transparent color. This is Permanent Rose. It's essentially placing one wash on top of another one. You can also use a glaze to paint an object. Here's a vase. I've been careful to paint around the highlight. You can glaze over a previous glaze as long as you continue to use transparent colors. Here I'm doing a cast shadow and a bit of a core shadow.